When you think about global perception, Israel has always been a giant. Forged in conflict, it perfected the art of hasbara, public diplomacy, and learned to turn a story into a shield and a sword. For decades, its power to shape its own narrative, especially in the West, was a key part of its national security. But what if that giant is being quietly, methodically outplayed in the global PR game? And what if the architect of this takedown isn't a superpower, but a tiny desert nation with a completely new playbook? And this isn't just about tweets and headlines. It's about a deep shift in the information battlefield. This is the story of how Qatar, a country smaller than Connecticut, is executing a long game, a multi-decade strategy looking 30 years into the future to achieve its goals. It's giving a masterclass in soft power, and in the process, turning a brutal, complex conflict into a public relations victory. This is how Qatar is winning. Qatar's current influence is not a reaction to recent events. It is the calculated result of a multi-decade strategy. For years, the nation has been deliberately converting its immense natural gas wealth into geopolitical capital. This is all part of a grand strategy, officially known as Qatar National Vision 2030. A plan launched in 2008 to transform the country into an advanced global player with a diversified, knowledge-based economy. The playbook has been clear. Use near limitless funds to build a global brand and secure an indispensable role in world affairs. The strategy began long before the current conflicts dominated headlines, with Qatar methodically building the pillars of its influence. It launched a global media network, positioned itself as a key diplomatic mediator, and began investing billions into the foundational institutions of the West. Instead of building a massive army, Qatar built a different kind of arsenal, one based on media, money, and mediation. It wasn't waiting for a crisis to react to. It was patiently building the infrastructure needed to shape the narrative when a crisis inevitably arrived. This long-term vision has allowed Qatar to seize control of the global story, turning moments of regional conflict into opportunities to project its own power and agenda onto the world stage. Qatar's most powerful weapon isn't a missile system, it's a media network. Al Jazeera, owned and funded by the Qatari state, has become one of the most influential voices in the Arab world, and its power is a masterstroke of soft power. While many Western media outlets are criticized for a pro-Israel bias, Al Jazeera provides an unapologetically pro-Palestinian perspective. Throughout the conflict, Al Jazeera's coverage has been relentless. Its reporting focuses like a laser on the human cost of the war, consistently highlighting Palestinian stories, framing them as victims of Israeli aggression, and personalizing their deaths with images of grief and loss. And this isn't just journalism, it's emotional mobilization. The network's graphic footage from Gaza has repeatedly gone viral, bypassing traditional news and reaching millions of young people in the West directly through social media. This has been crucial in shifting public opinion, especially on university campuses and among younger audiences who are already skeptical of mainstream news. Of course, critics accuse Al Jazeera of being a propaganda arm for the Qatari government and its allies, including Islamist movements. But to its audience, it's often seen as a credible corrective to a biased Western narrative. This strategy has paid off. Polling in countries like the UK, for instance, has shown a significant shift in public opinion, with growing support for halting arms sales to Israel and a rising belief that Israel is committing human rights abuses. Al Jazeera didn't just cover the story. It shaped the emotional and political lens through which the world understands it. While its media arm fights the information war, Qatar's diplomats play a very sophisticated double game. For decades, Qatar has intentionally crafted a role for itself as the indispensable mediator, the one player who can talk to everybody. It hosts the largest U.S. airbase in the Middle East, a critical asset for Washington. At the same time, it is a primary benefactor of the Muslim Brotherhood, the transnational Sunni Islamist movement. And this patronage extends to groups like Hamas, which is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood and whose political leadership has been hosted in Doha since 2012. This unique and paradoxical position gives Qatar incredible leverage. It allows the nation to rally the region to present a unified front against Israel, while also making itself essential to both Israel and the West for any hostage negotiations or ceasefire talks. Even as Israeli officials blast Qatar for supporting Hamas, they find themselves relying on Doha's back channels. This indispensability gives Qatar immense political cover. It can absorb criticism for its ties to the Muslim Brotherhood and other militant groups by pointing to its crucial role in de-escalation, effectively turning a major liability into its greatest diplomatic strength. This intricate web of influence is complex, and we're only scratching the surface. If you're finding this analysis valuable and want to understand the hidden forces shaping our world, please take a moment to give this video a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives. Your support helps us continue to ask these critical questions. Qatar's PR war isn't just fought on screens and in diplomatic halls. It's also a ground war waged in the corridors of power in Washington, and perhaps most visibly on the campuses of America's most elite universities and the streets of Western cities. Qatar has become one of the biggest foreign donors to American higher education. According to a 2022 report, Qatar donated at least $4.7 billion to U.S. universities between 2001 and 2021. Institutions like Cornell, Carnegie Mellon, and Georgetown have received hundreds of millions, often to build satellite campuses in Qatar's education city. Critics argue this financial fire hose creates a dependency that can compromise academic freedom and influence campus culture. Research groups allege there is a link between the influx of Qatari funding and the rise of organized pro-Palestinian activism and street protests on these same campuses. They point to the fact that universities receiving the most funding have often become epicenters for protests and teach-ins that amplify the narrative of Palestinian suffering and draw major media attention. Qatar, for its part, has denied these allegations, stating the funds are for operating costs and that it has no influence on U.S. home campuses. Beyond the campus, Qatar has also mastered the art of inside the Beltway influence, spending hundreds of millions on D.C. lobbying and PR firms. This spending helps counteract powerful pro-Israel groups and ensures that, despite its controversial relationships, Qatar's status as a key U.S. ally remains secure. It's a quiet, expensive, and devastatingly effective campaign to win influence, not through debate, but through investment and integration into the very institutions that shape Western thought. Qatar's success isn't just about its own smart strategy. It's also being helped along by Israel's own catastrophic failures in public diplomacy. Israel's hasbara, once its pride, appears broken. After an initial wave of global sympathy following major attacks, that support has repeatedly vanished, leaving Israel looking like the aggressor and increasingly isolated on the world stage. There's a widespread feeling, even inside Israel, that its PR efforts are failing. One big reason is the lack of a single coherent strategy. Different government ministries and even the military are all competing for control, which leads to mixed messages and a disjointed story. The IDF spokesperson's unit, often seen as the most professional of the bunch, has been forced to act as the national spokesperson, but its messages are naturally militaristic and not always suited for diplomatic persuasion. On top of that, Israeli leaders often seem to be talking to a domestic audience, using tough rhetoric that plays well at home but alienates partners abroad. Instead of building a consistent case, the messaging too often defaults to accusations of anti-Semitism. While sometimes true, this approach struggles to persuade a skeptical global audience. This inward-facing communication is a stark contrast to Qatar's global multi-channel campaign. Israel is fighting a 21st century information war with a 20th century playbook, and it's getting beat. The story of this PR war reveals a new kind of reality. Power in the 21st century isn't just about who has the strongest army or the biggest economy. It's about who tells the most compelling story. Qatar has built a sophisticated, multi-billion-dollar machine designed to do one thing: shape global perception. It is the result of a long game strategy. It blends the emotional punch of Al Jazeera, the strategic ambiguity of its role as a mediator and patron to the Muslim Brotherhood, and the deep-seated influence of its financial investments in the West. It plays both sides, acting as a friend to the West while championing causes hostile to it. Israel, meanwhile, seems trapped by its own history, using arguments and tactics that are losing their power. It might be winning battles on the ground, but it's losing the war for hearts and minds. And in the long run, that war might be the one that truly matters. The question isn't whether Qatar's strategy is working. It clearly is. Now, the real question is how long it can be sustained. How long can a country play the part of both arsonist and firefighter? And what does it mean for the rest of us when the truth of a conflict becomes less important than the PR campaign used to sell it? The playbook has been written. Now we all have to watch and see how the game ends.